thank you everybody for joining another episode of Intentwise Connect webinars. We are joined today by Schermer Tamir from Marketing by Emma. She's the founder there. And we're going to be talking about something that I think sometimes gets overlooked in the journey of growing your brand, especially in e-commerce, which is actually telling that brand story, having foundations and values that your brand stands for, and like Emma says, building an unbeatable brand on e-commerce. So really excited to dig into Emma's suggestions and her experience in branding with e-commerce today. Before we do that, I just want to give a quick introduction of Intentwise in case you don't know who we are or what we do. We are a software provider that helps work with brands and agencies that sell on Amazon and Walmart, Instacart or Criteo. And we offer 3 software solutions that help you grow your business. The first of which is our Intentwise Ad Optimizer. This connects to Walmart and Amazon ads and allows you to optimize them using rules, AI, or a mix of both. The best thing about our ad optimizer is it doesn't box you into one particular strategy. You can just implement as many different strategies as you need, and we support them all. Next is our Intentwise Analytics Cloud. This is an end-to-end reporting solution. So we connect to all of the APIs from Amazon and Walmart, download all of your data, connect it together, and make it available to you in state-of-the-art data warehouses. We also have reports that you can get up and running within just a matter of days. So if you need help with your reporting or visualization of any of your metrics on e-commerce, Analytics Cloud is the product for you. And last but not least, our latest solution, which is called Intentwise Explore, is a platform that is built on top of Amazon Marketing Cloud. So it allows you to build audiences, get insights, run queries from Amazon Marketing Cloud without needing to write any SQL yourself. It can all be done within the Intentwise platform with a click of the button. So without any further ado, if you want to learn more about Intentwise or our products, you can check out our website or message me on LinkedIn. But for now, I will go ahead and turn the time over to Emma and allow her to introduce herself and walk us through today's presentation.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Ryan. And as you mentioned, this topic often gets overlooked, but especially when you're thinking about using these tools to be selling on a variety of different marketplaces, the brand piece becomes even more important. So whether you're gearing up to get to that place or you already have an omni-channel strategy, making sure that you have a cohesive sense of who your business is and where you're going is not only just necessary, but is really going to help you carve out a more competitive niche that you can defend, that you can grow from, and that you can really build a business that has longevity. And we all know that the e-commerce space is not easy right now. There are increasing fees, things are more competitive. There's new players on the block like TikTok. There's so much complexity to just really being profitable. And so this conversation today, my goal is to encourage you to take a little bit of a step back, to be thinking strategically and to really establish a solid foundation that then you can start building upon to make sure that you're set up to be able to continue to be profitable into the future and to really build a strong business that has immense value. And so let's all just look at this glass of water for a moment. When you see this water, do you see a business opportunity? I realize maybe this sounds a little bit strange and you don't really know where I'm going with this. But the fact is that so many businesses, in fact, the vast majority of businesses they don't have something related to the product itself that they can differentiate themselves on. So if you are selling a glass of water and someone else is selling a glass of water, there's only so many things at your disposal that you can use to differentiate the product. Most likely, the thing that is actually going to be attracting people to buying your glass of water versus somebody else's glass of water is something deeper and something that's not immediately visible on the surface. And if you're like some people, you might actually see a 700 million plus business opportunity when you look at that glass of water. You could say that it's definitely a glass half full from that perspective. So what can you do to compete in a flooded market? If you are selling something that you have a lot of competitors who are selling something very similar, is there a way that you can carve out a niche for yourself, build a really thriving business, and not just have to compete by being the cheapest, that's some people's strategy, and it can be effective to just say we're going to drop our prices below what everybody else is selling. But of course, that is not really great for trying to build a profitable business. And it's also not defensible because somebody else can always come in and decide that they are going to make their prices even lower. And they might just have a strategy that they're going to keep their prices so low until they drive everybody out of business, and then they can set prices at whatever they like. So being the cheapest is definitely not necessarily something that you can stake your claim to and build a solid business on long term. Some people just rely on the fact that they've been around forever. So they say, oh, yes, we have this brand recognition. People have been buying us for years. We're a legacy brand. We don't have to worry about all of this. We know that if we're just where we need to be, that's enough. Some people will just decide to opt out. They are just going to say, this is too competitive. We're not going to be able to be successful, so we're not even going to try. There's always, let's just drive more traffic. We'll run more ads. We'll set a higher budget. We'll just be really aggressive with our advertising and marketing strategies. Maybe we see that all these scrappy new brands have really interesting deals that they're running with influencers and spokespeople, and we'll get people to promote our products on TikTok and Instagram, and that's the way forward. So all of these are tactics that can be used or not used, but none of these are really a long-term strategy that's going to help you go the distance. So my name is Emma Schermer Tamir. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Marketing by Emma. That gentleman to the left of me is my husband and business partner, Erez. We started Marketing by Emma in 2016. And since then, we've worked with over 2,000 businesses from all over the world, helping them get very clear about how they can strategically differentiate themselves and then communicate effectively with their target customers. We do this through listing optimization, through website copy, and through really helping businesses communicate through a unique brand identity and voice. And so through this, we've learned a lot about what it takes to be competitive in the most hyper-competitive marketplaces in the world, like Amazon. And again, you are most likely not going to be coming to market with an invention that has zero competitors. You're likely going to be going after the same set of keywords that tens or hundreds of other businesses are vying for. And so what can you do as a business to win over the right kinds of customers, keep them coming back for more, turn them into brand evangelists, and really build a successful business? And that's one of the things that brand can do for you. So it's something that is going to help set you apart, but it's also going to continue to feed and fuel your business for years to come. So I've developed what I'm calling the 3 C's for building an unbeatable brand. And I did a little finagling. I probably wouldn't word these this way if I wasn't going after the 3 C's, but just for the sake of something catchy, this is the wording that I've come up with. So the first thing is you need to establish a competitive landscape survey. So you need to understand who you're competing against, what the competitive landscape looks like, so that you can understand how you fit into that. The second is you need a customer avatar. So you need to be very clear about who your customers are, getting very specific about the people that you serve. And then the third part is your company identity deep dive. So really building out a solid sense of who your brand is. And these, I realize, are numbered, and it might suggest that they are showing the order that you should be doing these in. But these are really something cyclical, where not only is there not necessarily one leads to the next, they all should be happening in tandem, and they should all also be happening constantly. So these shouldn't be elements that you are reflecting on once and then saying, okay, I've checked that off the list. I'm done. I don't need to worry about that anymore. Let's move on. These are things that you want to be continuously coming back to, because each one of these elements is constantly being influenced and changed by a whole variety of different factors. So there are new competitors coming into the landscape. There's new things happening in the world that might be affecting why somebody would want your product or how they're thinking about it. People themselves change and evolve over time. And similarly, as your business exists, your business is going to evolve and change over time. And so we want to make sure that all of these we're clear on, and that we are keeping current to not only what's happening now, but with a sight towards what's also going to be happening down the road in the future. So step 1, survey the competitive landscape. In other words, we're trying to answer the question, what sets you apart from the competition? What makes you unique? So we're not just looking at the competition and saying, okay, this is how it stands, but we're looking at the competition also in relationship to who we are and what makes us special, and really looking for those gaps and those opportunities where we might be able to establish a clearer boundary around our niche, or even almost creating our own category within the category. And I'll show you what I mean in a moment. So what do you do when you look like everyone else? These are some of the top water bottle brands out there, and you can see that all of them look very similar. So we have natural colors, blue. We have the one Perrier that's in a green bottle, but everything else is blue to be like water, and very natural images of mountains and animals, and nothing here really stands out as being something strongly unique. And there's also probably not a ton of loyalty that's happening, as much as what's available when you happen to need a bottle of water. So it's not that we all are having a personal affiliation with saying that I relate to Smart Water or Voss or Fiji, and that is who I am, and that's how I want to be associated. It's really just a matter of availability and convenience. Now, a lot of these companies have built very successful businesses, but they're all sort of more or less equal with slight variations. Some might have a special pH or electrolytes, but again, very minor, minimal things. And then we have a company that's coming into the scene like Liquid Death, and immediately they're doing a few things very, very differently. And they're not just doing it differently to be different, but very intentionally, because it is carving out something that doesn't exist. So they are putting their water rather than in bottles, or there are a few companies that have their water in carton boxes, but they are unique in putting their water in a can. Of course, we have LaCroix and things like that, but even their non-sparkling water is served in a can, which there really aren't any well-known companies that are doing that. So not only are they putting it in a can, but they are using a very distinctive design with this can that is eerily reminiscent, perhaps even strongly borrowing from Guinness beer. So the next time you see a Guinness beer, see if you can spot the similarity with Liquid Death. And they're not shying away from this. They are actually playing into the idea that it is very easy to mistake these cans as an alcoholic beverage. And that is a core piece of their brand identity and how they're showing up. So you see here that it's not just the design, the text here, don't be scared, it's just water, murder your thirst, death to plastic. So we're using the totally opposite language and the opposite sense of brand here, in contrast to these other waters that are life water, smart water. So, the sustaining properties of water, they're they're flipping that on its head and doing something really different. So this isn't something that's just operating in a vacuum. It is also operating in response to all of the other brands out there. Because if they were just to come out and put their water in a bottle that looked very similarly to those other bottles and all else was equal, it still wouldn't have the same impact that this does. So they've made some very strong choices in response to the competitive landscape that they are selling in. So we need to think outside of the bottle if we want to be competitive, particularly in a very high competition environment. So different ways that you can go about starting to figure out where some of those opportunities are could be reading reviews. So looking at reviews of your competitors and of your own and getting a sense of what people care about, what they're talking about. And it doesn't have to just relate to your product itself. It can also relate to a lifestyle. It can relate to a group of customers. It can relate to a lot of different things. So this is one place where you can go. And also it's one place where AI has really sped things up and also helped us get even better input from reviews. So you can actually have the AI, like your ChatGPT or Claude or whatever your AI chat tool of preference. You can copy those reviews into the AI, ask it to review the reviews, and then share with you its top observations, analyze them for what are the most common things that people are talking about, the positives and the negatives, and all of those things where it may be difficult to even recognize some of those patterns if you are just looking at each one as a standalone, as a human. So I highly recommend integrating AI into that specific piece of things. Social media research is also a really great way of being able to understand what people are talking about and what they're caring about in the different categories that you're selling in. So be that TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of these different social media platforms are also going to be giving you insights into different types of customers. So just be keeping that in mind. But another great way to get a sense of what that competitive environment looks like. And as you're reviewing all these things, thinking about, is there a neglected customer base? So is there a group of people that's not really being seen or spoken to or served? Are there certain benefits or concerns or use cases that are not really being capitalized on by your competitors? And then are there any other things that present themselves as unique positioning opportunities that you can utilize to begin to really stake your claim to your own subcategory? So step 2, develop your customer avatar or your customer avatars. So if you're not familiar with this term, essentially customer avatar is a very detailed profile of who your target customer is. And one of the most common mistakes that I see people making when it comes to both branding as well as any of their marketing efforts is we have this innate desire as people to want to be appealing to everyone. And even the most seasoned marketers that know all these rules still really easily fall into this trap, because it can be very scary to draw a line and say who you're trying to target, because when you do that, you are also saying who you're not targeting. So it feels like you're closing the door on potential customers. But what actually happens is that when you get really clear about who you're serving, not only are you able to really delight and speak to and connect with that target customer group, but then from there, you eventually, if you do this well, can start to expand out beyond even that target customer base. So who is your target customer? You need to be clear on this. And the great thing about getting clear on this is that Once you are able to picture exactly who you're trying to serve, it will make so many of your decisions much easier, because suddenly if I go from trying to market an item that is targeted to anybody between the ages of 18 and 99 that's living in either rural or urban environment, and I mean, that doesn't give me any specificity or clarity. I am essentially having to dilute my messaging in order to try to appeal to a very wide audience. Whereas if I get really clear and I say I'm serving 18 to 23-year-old males living in rural areas, and there's one named Luke, and Luke is super into this video game. I'm sorry, I'm not a gamer, so no video games are immediately coming to mind. But you see what happens as we start to get really specific. Now we can start to begin to picture who is this person, and then that's going to inform the kind of language that we're using and the way that we're engaging with this person. And suddenly we're able to bring in a clear perspective and voice, which that's a little bit of foreshadowing into the next step. But let's, again, Liquid Death, I chose this as a case study, not because I think that everybody can or should emulate them. They have a really specific vision of who their customers are and who their brands are, and they really push boundaries, sometimes in ways that upset people. They have some pretty aggressive marketing, let's just say, from time to time, that is definitely not for everybody. But the reason that I chose them as a case study for this presentation today is because it also shows very clearly how precise and focused they are about who they're serving, and how willing they are to push boundaries and ruffle feathers. But you can do these same things in a variety of different ways. So you don't have to be intentionally provoking people or intentionally being very edgy to really embody these principles and philosophies and apply them to your business. You can do the same thing by being very gentle and unassuming. It's really just about creating that contrast that's so important. And so obviously with a company like Liquid Death, that contrast is pretty extreme. And so it's much easier to see and grasp and get a sense of what I'm talking about. So this is incredible. Liquid Death has thousands. I didn't have a way of counting, but if you go and look at how many images they're tagged in, you can just, on Instagram, you can just scroll forever seeing pictures of people tagging Liquid Death in their social media. And you can see that there's a little bit of a sense of, we have like the horror fan, we have somebody that looks like they're in a cemetery, somebody that almost looks like maybe they're in the back room, they're like in a band or something like that. So they have a really clear customer base and a really strong sense of who that is. They've also, in addition to building a business that's now has an over $700 million valuation, they sold over $3 million last year in merch. Essentially, people that love this brand so much that they want to spend money to buy products to essentially market this company's business. People are getting their logo tattooed on their bodies. So this is a really strong indication that they know who their customers are and that they're communicating really effectively with them, because they have such a cult-like following and such an enthusiasm in their customer base. So you have to obsess over your customers. And the first step of that is figuring out who your customers are. So like we talked about, developing that customer avatar that's really detailed, that's very clear, so that anybody on your team can easily picture exactly who they're talking to. And you might have a few, but you want these to be very specific, because that is just going to make your job so much easier and bring a lot more conviction to every choice that you're making, and the way that you are thinking about even where to sell and where to market, and how you should be planning that strategy for continued growth. Part of that is also really thinking about what your customers care about. So not just in relationship to your product, but also in the broader world. So what are the things that they're scared about? What's keeping them up at night? What are their favorite forms of entertainment? All of those details are going to really help you get a stronger sense of not just the surface level details of your customers, but the emotional psychographics that are going to help you be able to connect emotionally and motivate them on a deeper level. And then on that other side, thinking about how your product can connect with what the customers care about. So what are the benefits of your product, and how can you align those in a way that is going to really delight your customers? And sometimes it can be difficult to figure out what that benefit is. So the best way of doing that is to have that customer avatar in mind, and then look at a feature of your product and ask yourself, why does this matter to Luke? Just to go back to this random avatar that I was building on the spot a moment ago. So why does this matter to Luke? And then we ask if maybe then we get a little bit deeper, but we're still not all the way there. We're still not at those really juicy, meaty emotions that are the ones that are going to compel us to take action. So, whether it's a aspiration to certain status, or a fear, or a vision of ourselves in the future, or a desire for love. Those are the types of emotions that I'm talking about. And the more that we can tap into those, the more compelling our content is going to be.
Emma, I want to maybe just ask, those last two points I thought were pretty interesting about, trying to get into the mind of your customer and what they care about and what gets them excited. Do you think you could maybe take a stab? Obviously, I know you don't work at Liquid Death, but how do you think they are taking these two into consideration with all of the branding they do and the community that they've built surrounding their product?
Excellent question. So I think one of the main things is that they understand that their customers have a strong desire to be unique and different. Like they are not wanting to be like everyone else. They like being edgy and provocative, and even sort of getting a little bit of that strong response, positive or negative, doesn't matter. They don't want to be a part of the crowd. And so that's an element of, I would say, status, as well as just a personal sense of feeling special and different. I realize this might be a weird parallel, but in some ways it almost relates to how Apple customers are, where they pride themselves on being Apple customers, and they understand what that means when when people see them with an Apple product versus an Android, and it goes both ways. So I would say that that's probably the strongest point of that, because when you look at, like, lately, some of their marketing has been really out there. Like, I don't know if you've seen the commercial. It's a pregnant woman drinking from the can. And so it's like really making it look like she's drinking alcohol when she's pregnant. And then I think there's another one, or it might be the same one, where there's a little girl who's drinking from it. And it's kind of playing on this concept of, like, are they alcoholics? Which, like, is pushing pretty serious boundaries. They also, like, Steve-O is one of their big brand partnerships. And so he sort of also embodies this intentional outcast who's free spirited, who does things because of and trying to be different. So I feel like now I'm sort of repeating myself over and over again. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting too, because and I agree, like the identity of Liquid Death is to be different. That's why they make these bold, like you said, provocative statements. I think what's interesting is that has absolutely nothing to do with the product itself. Like you said, it's water. There's probably many other examples of brands like this. One I can think of is Dude Wipes, right? They have this very similar, like, edgy, provocative marketing language that has ultimately nothing to do with the product you're buying, but your customers want to associate with that and want to be a part of that that identity that you've created. So very cool, very
Yeah.
interesting, I think, to work
Yeah,
with companies like that.
that's a great example. And that the point that you made, if you're listening and you didn't really let that sink in, you should, because it's pretty profound, which is that when you do this really effectively, the product in some ways is almost not inconsequential. Like, you need a good product and you need to choose the right product to do this with. But it's really this same brand concept could have been applied to a number of other product categories and could probably have been just as successful. Now, I do think that there is something particularly powerful about taking such a stark contrast with something like water, which, it's always thought of as life sustaining. And then they're using all this language around death and murder. But you notice that they also, like, one of their other parts of their identity is, and I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself with this, but they are, they're not just about being provocative. They also are intentional about choosing aluminum cans because it is more environmentally friendly than plastic. So, like, they talk about, and you can look at it on their website and everything, that it is infinitely recyclable. And so it's actually much better for the environment. And so they're not just making choices to be different for the sake of different. They are very thoughtful and intentional about all of these decisions, and there is depth to them. So I think that that's really important to keep in mind, that it can be easy to see some of these examples and to fall into feeling like you need to be gimmicky, and that can actually lead you down a path that may not get you where you want to go.
Definitely.
So that sort of just really nicely leads us into step 3, which is building your brand identity. So we've kind of been talking about this in tandem, because, as I mentioned, it's not just a step 1 and then step 2 and then step 3. You should be thinking about all of these components as you're considering each one. So they're really all working together to create a very strong, essentially, conversation is what we're trying to do. So even if you are selling on Amazon or Walmart or Instacart or wherever you're selling, really great branding and marketing is facilitating a conversation even when somebody is simply looking at it through a screen, because they're looking at it and they're seeing themselves. They're feeling some sort of emotion that you're trying to evoke. They're feeling heard and seen and understood. And so this is a part of doing that. A conversation requires 2 entities. And so we're clear about the customers, but just as important, we need to understand who our brand is, how we want to show up in the world. And these are choices that are really powerful, not only for your marketing, but really for informing decisions throughout your entire business. When you're clear about who your customers are and what your brand identity is, then that is going to influence the way that you engage with customers when there are problems, and the types of packaging you use, and the language that you use, and all of these other choices are going to be influenced by your how your brand is wanting to show up in the world. So one of the ways that I think it can be helpful to think about this is to imagine if your brand were a person, how would you describe them? Because what we often fall into when we are thinking about brand identity is these really conceptual terms. So, we talk about values and vision and mission, and I don't want to discount the significance and importance of those. You really need to be clear on them. However, it can be difficult if you're only thinking about those to then translate that into what it looks like when you're actually engaging in the real world. So the kinds of language that you're using and the type of humor that you may or may not use, and the colors that you choose, and all of these things are going to be informed by your brand identity. And so creating essentially a customer avatar type profile for your brand is a great way to bring a lot of clarity to how you're wanting to show up. And then it's also really going to help align everybody on your team to understand where they're aiming. Because if you simply say, our brand has a sense of humor and is a little edgy and is also very intelligent, that could be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Whereas if you say that my brand is a 40-year-old guy who used to play in a rock band and whose favorite show is Family Guy, and during the day he's running a startup, now you have a very precise understanding of not just what kind of not just this, that he has a sense of humor, but what kind of a sense of humor he has, what he's going to find funny, the kinds of cultural references that are going to resonate with him. And so that's where this can be so helpful, and really getting concrete and clear about how you're going to be really showing up in a, not just showing up, but in a consistent, cohesive, strong, intentional way. Because if you're not intentional about these things, it's still going to happen. It's just that there's going to be a disconnect, and things are not necessarily going to feel the same and feel cohesive. And people may not necessarily be able to put their finger on what feels off, but there's going to probably be something that just feels a little bit weird to them and is potentially going to create some of that friction that's going to send people on to your competitors. So back to Liquid Death, we're talking about their brand identity. And if you look at every single choice they make is so intentional. So when you're signing up for their newsletter, they say want free horror scopes. So they're, playing into all these things. They have this flask that they sell. I think it's called the cask something. It's essentially like a flask in the shape of a casket. Their loyalty club is the Liquid Death Country Club, and you can sell your soul and get all these benefits. So not only are they clear about who their customers are, they're really clear about who they are. And then through that, they are able to get super creative with how they are doing all these different things and making all of these choices in a way that is really going to set them very strongly apart from the competition. So you are not going to confuse Liquid Death with anybody else. Although I did see that now they have some copycats. So it'll be interesting to see how this space evolves, because of course, whenever there is a lot of success somewhere, then you normally have people that are trying to replicate that success without being creative and just trying to do the same thing. So you have to go bold, because as we were talking about with Ryan's observation earlier, your brand may be your only differentiator. Your brand is actually the main thing that is really going to be resonating with people and creating that connection and transforming this from something that just has the most reviews or the cheapest price or just happened to be there when they needed it, to something that they want to be associated with, that they want to tell people about, that they want to feel connected to, that they want to continue buying and evangelizing about. And so you have to know what makes you different. You have to know who your customers aren't. You have to be consistent and cohesive, like I just spoke about. And you have to really understand, why would people choose you? What is it about what you're offering that is going to delight customers, that is going to make them get excited to choose you? They have a lot of other choices out there. In fact, maybe for a long time, they've been choosing somebody else. So what's going to be compelling enough for them to make a different choice, to even create something that could potentially be uncomfortable or lead to a problem for them? If they have something and they know it works, why should they get out of their comfort zone to do something different? So developing a unique and distinct voice, using storytelling, which is really, that's a whole other topic that we don't have time to go into today, but I wanted to point it out because it is a really powerful tool, not just in the sense of telling a story, but even using story as a framework for how you position some of these different elements. If you'd like to learn more about that, I highly recommend the book Story Brand by Donald Miller. And I also have a YouTube video that I just published that goes over that framework and how you can implement it in your own business. So that's it in a nutshell. I would really love to encourage you to, even if you don't want to go bold in the way that Liquid Death has, to really think about where maybe you're playing it a little bit safe, either with the customers that you're trying to serve or how you're showing up, and how you can take some steps towards being a little bit bolder in really carving out that new product category that is going to allow you to create these fans and this loyalty like Liquid Death has done so effectively. And if you are feeling overwhelmed by this and you would like somebody to take a look either at your Amazon listing or a Walmart listing or a page on your website, we're also happy to offer a free listing analysis. So you can go to marketingbyemma.com/free analysis or scan that QR code to claim that. And lastly, if you have questions or if you would like our help doing any of this, please feel free to reach out. Always happy to answer any questions that you might have or help in any way that I can. So thank you so much. And also happy to answer any and all questions now.
Yes. Thank you so much, Emma. That was an amazing presentation. I definitely learned a lot. And I think it's very interesting for some of us who spend our days in the day-to-day tactically, changing keyword bids and optimizing accounts, to actually think about all of the other things that are happening or should be happening at the brand level to come up with a really solid brand identity. One question I had, just to maybe wrap this up, and if anybody else has questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and we will take them now. But I'm curious with, you mentioned generative AI during the presentation once as a means to, analyze large amounts of text like reviews and very quickly pull out insights. I think something else that's happened somewhat recently is companies like Amazon providing tools to generate images or to generate titles and bullet points for your listings for you. Kind of the opposite of what we've just been talking about today, which is being very intentional about how you create those listings. So what are your thoughts in general on using generative AI for listing creation or for social media image creation? Like we start to see brands doing it more and more often. Do you think that's, bad idea, good idea? What do you think?
So I feel like that's a complicated question where I can't say all good or all bad. And I will say that it's an excellent question. And in general, one of the things that AI has done is, in some ways, it's really leveled the playing field. So frankly, a few years ago, if you just had something written in decent English and some okay photos, you would likely do okay on Amazon. You didn't necessarily need to have the most impressive or amazing marketing, because there were lots of people that just either didn't have the budget or were not native speakers, English speakers. And so you could just use that to build trust and to demonstrate that you're a legitimate business and do pretty well. So you don't have that advantage anymore when it comes to AI, because now everybody has access to creating, decent, passable content. So I would say if you have a very large catalog, then it can be great. What we've personally found is that it's better for the idea generation and the research and the kind of prep work side of things. So even using it to help you create customer avatars and build out brand identities or rephrase things through different types of voices can be fantastic. But using it as a standalone to just create without having that input is really going to be doing the opposite of what we're talking about. So it's only going to make you blend in, because AI is not capable, at least not now, of thinking in this creative, innovative way like Liquid Death has done. So that some of those ideas, and they're constantly pushing the envelope in ultimately what creativity is taking two unrelated ideas and finding a way to combine them in a way that's interesting and innovative and unique. And AI doesn't really do that. AI works with what it already has. And so it can be good for some of those filler things. It can be good for some initial drafting, but what that should do is it should actually free up more time and creative space to also be thinking deeper strategically about what you can do to position yourself uniquely. And so I would say it's really thinking about how you can use the two in tandem to create something special that stands out, that's connecting with people in a way that just AI isn't capable of doing.
I really love that answer. I think AI is helpful for a lot of things, especially things that take a lot of time or just are looking for patterns in systemic information. But when it comes to, like you said, creating, there's no better mind for that than your own or the mind of your team. So I think when it comes to using generative AI, and this is something we've seen as well, it definitely is best used in the brainstorming process and or when you need to do things at incredible scale that would just not be possible to do manually. But very interesting to see how that will continue to evolve over the years.
Agreed. Neil Patel puts out a lot of really interesting research around, because he has access to such massive amounts of data with his different tools and with his agency. And one of the things that he's put out a lot of sort of insights about is the engagement rates of content that's just fully AI generated versus content that's also has a human input. And it's pretty starkly different how much better the human assisted or human created content does. And so if you're simply trying to create a lot, then you can do that with AI. But if your ultimate goal is to engage with humans, then you might just be creating a lot of noise without actually being effective in your end goal of connecting with other humans who are the ones that are going to be making the decisions about whether to buy from you or not.
That's right. Well, Emma, thank you again for your time today and putting this together. I think this has been fantastic. It seems like we don't have any other questions from the audience, so we can go ahead and wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with today?
No, other than, just the encouragement once more to maybe practice getting a little bit outside of your comfort zone with thinking about some of these things, and you might be surprised at what kind of results await you when you are willing to be more be bolder with how you approach your branding and strategic positioning.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. You can reach Emma at marketingbyemma.com or connect with her online. And if you have any other questions for Intentwise, feel free to reach out to me. We will be sharing the recording of this webinar early next week. So if you want to share it with your colleagues, please feel free to do so. And we hope to see you on the next Intentwise Connect webinar. Thanks, Emma. Hope you have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.